Okay, quick music disclaimer here. I do not own the rights to this music, which belongs to the rightful owner, who is the intoxicating mind of Dr. Frankenstein. So he made my intro and my outro, and I hope you guys enjoy. Check them out on Spotify and YouTube, and no copyright infringement is intended. Have a good day.
A clear choice of good versus evil, of right versus wrong.
Twisted Tales.
Hey, I'm Jen.
And I'm Sam.
And
we're
Death Before
Booze.
Booze. Our favorite thing to do is to tell each other outrageous stories and to see how the other one is going to react.
I figure we probably aren't the only ones who want to hear crazy stuff, so we started a podcast.
Yup. We're two friends who love all things true crime, paranormal, weird, and just plain sinister.
If any of that sounds like it's up your alley, every Tuesday, come on and join us for news stories, chats, and mostly laughs.
And you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Amazon.
Grab a friend, grab your booze, and join us.
Yep, and always stay spooky.
Due to some violent content, parental discretion is advised.
Welcome back to Twisted Tales, folks. So tonight's tale, we're going to talk about Bigfoot. No particular reason behind this, other than the fact that I just wanted to do this episode. So, I guess we could begin this one here. So, what is Bigfoot, you say? Well, he's a heavy, bipedal, humanoid ape. Now, it's believed that Bigfoot stands around 8 to 10 feet tall. Now, bipedal animals are like, say, kangaroo, ostriches, apes, birds, etc. Now, many are known as optional bipeds. So, this means that they're bipedal some of the time, and then they walk on all four legs at other times. So, common description of Bigfoot include like broad shoulders, no visible neck, and long arms. So it also has very dense fur, ranges in colors from red to white and even to brown. Now, apes and kangaroos and bears are occasionally bipedal. Now, Bigfoot may seem far-fetched to some, but I mean, local lore has tons of stories on Mr. Foot. So, I'm going to try to find you guys some tales. I mean, he's a hairy, mythical creature. He lives in the woods. His habitat is often associated with wet rainforests of the coastal Pacific Northwest and the region of British Columbia. But it can also live in environments such as like dry canyon lands, pine forest, different shrublands, and all that. Some say he loves the redwoods up in Humboldt County. So this has like the oldest and biggest, world's tallest redwoods, so this is where he's more comfortable. Now, some people claim to have heard Bigfoot, like, shriek. He howls, he screams, he growls. And some other noises here that he makes, like, he'll knock on, like, a tree, like, he'll go, like... And then you'll hear that sound, because he just knocks on trees. So some say that he does this to communicate with other Bigfoot. I mean, obviously, there's been more than 10,000 eyewitness accounts of Bigfoot in the continental U.S., like, over the last 50 years. So, I mean, there's lots of stories about him. But Washington State actually has a ton of sightings here. Like, this is the world's most active region. I believe there's about 2,000 sightings from that area alone. Now, Pennsylvania, there's another place that has a lot of sightings. I believe there's 1,300 sightings over there. It's most likely because of the Appalachian Mountain Range, because that has a high number of Bigfoot sightings. Now, it has hundreds of vast miles of forest. It's just a prime space for a large animal to go undetected. So, sometimes they have sightings up in Pennsylvania here. But, I mean, Pennsylvania's most interesting case involves a resting mountain biker who thought he was, like, watching the back end of a bear as it rummaged through a downed tree. But the biker's curiosity kind of turned to shock when the animal stood up. He thought it was a bear, but it was more like a giant that he remembers, because there was a 7-foot bipedal creature covered in black hair, and he was just rummaging through some trash and shit over by some downed tree. Now, there's also Michigan here. Now, the state has a high number of Bigfoot sightings. Some of the highest amounts of Bigfoot activity is actually near the National Wildlife Refuge in Michigan's Upper Pennsylvania. Now, one eerie report comes from a mother who was driving with her young infant. She pulled over for the night into a picnic area just to rest, and she was awoken by like a foul smell. So when she opened her eyes here, there was a large, hairy creature just staring at her and her child through the windshield. And the creature then shortly left afterwards. Even up there in Whitehall, New York, this is up near Lake George. Now, this place here is known as the Bigfoot capital of the East Coast. Now, the whole area has so many Bigfoot sightings that they actually named Bigfoot the official town animal. Now, it all began one night in 1976 here. There was a few teenagers on this rural road. Now, they claimed that they saw this hairy creature kind of charge towards them, and then he went the other way. Now, they kind of got scared. They ran back into town. They got help from police because they were hearing like sounds in the woods, like snapping twigs and shit getting closer to them. And another tale here. This is up in East Texas. Like that area borders Oklahoma and Louisiana. Now the sites here, like they have Bigfoot reports every year. Now one of the most horrifying encounters actually comes from a hunter up in Panola County. So the witness claims that while he was hog hunting, he watched a Sasquatch leap out of the woods, grab one of the hogs, and then the Bigfoot began making loud whooping noises. So these were kind of met with like more howls somewhere off into the distance before they walked back into the woods, and then they seen the creature staring directly at the hunter. He ended up growling at him and then taking off. So I mean that's just a couple stories from over like the United States area here. But I mean, there's tons of Bigfoot tales from all over Earth, especially like places that have their own take on Bigfoot, right? Up in Canada, like there's just as many sightings up this way too. Like up in BC here, British Columbia, there's like 200 Sasquatch sightings that have been reported in the areas of Harrison Hot Springs, Pitt Lake, Whistler, Squamish, Hope, Mission, and even on Vancouver Island. Now, many people have also reported hearing like the Sasquatch making high-pitched screams, howling at night, and this is just right across the British Columbia area. Now, he's believed by some to exist all over the northern United States and in western Canada. I mean, there's also tales in like North America counterpart here up in the Himalayan region too. They call this guy the Abominable Snowman, the Yeti, or the Sasquatch. The creature can be linked to many indigenous myths here, legends, all that, because many of the indigenous cultures include tales of like a mysterious hair-covered creature living in the forests. The name Sasquatch actually came from the tribes up in British Columbia. So it was kind of coined by a Canadian journalist who wrote a series of articles about Bigfoot back in the 1920s. Now, there's a couple things here that say like Bigfoot started here, the name Bigfoot comes from here. Everybody has their own terminology for Bigfoot. Now, a lot of them say that his footprints are claimed to be as large as 24 inches long and 8 inches wide. Even some North American settlers started reporting sightings back in the late 1800s and even into the 1900s here. Like, Bigfoot footprints are kind of flat. I'll give you a little bit of description on these here. Now, there's no arch and a double ball, and the deepest part of the footprint is the front of the foot. His toes are always freely moving. Now, this guy's footprints have enlarged heels with a well-rounded heel pad. Now, they may have like fine impressions of dermal ridges, sweat pores, all that. And the average step length of a Bigfoot footprint is like got to be 114 centimeters, so like 45 inches, I would say. But I mean, there's no scientific proof of Bigfoot's existence, though. Like, the footprints have been made from like other animals, like bears, or they may be fraudulent because people are coming out and just, oh look, I found Bigfoot's footprints, and just make it themselves, kind of thing, right? And I'll get into that a little bit more here. And although like the scientific community kind of remains skeptical and there's little evidence on his existence here, like not a lot of people can support a modern day Bigfoot, right? I mean, there are a lot of people that have made claims that they've seen his footprints here, so like they would get out to the news, the media, shit like that too, right? Now in 1958, the Humboldt Times, which is a local newspaper in Northern California, they published a story about the discovery of a giant mysterious footprint. And this is located up near the Bluff Creek area of California. So in this tale here, they refer to the creature as Bigfoot. This kind of made everybody's curiosity grow rapidly. And although, like, a little later on, there was articles in True magazine. These were published in December 1959, and they described the whole 1958 incident here. So the footprints near Bluff Creek were actually a prank by a man called Ray Wallace. Now, his children revealed this after his death in 2002. Now, Wallace was born in Clarksdale, Missouri on April 21st, 1918. So over the course of his life, he served the United States Army during World War II. He was an airport gunner. Now, Wallace finally settled up in Toledo, Washington back in 1961. The life expectancy of a tail gunner is only like 6 to 8 weeks anyway. But once he was done out of the war, he survived. So he had worked most of his life as a lumberjack here, or a logger. So as a lumberjack, you have like different duties that you gotta do, right? Cut trees down, using axes, chainsaws, other cutting tools. You trim tree branches and logs to size, take your logs to sawmills and other processing facilities, shit like that. You also had to maintain and repair your cutting tools and your other equipment like that. On August 1958, the Humboldt Times up in Eureka, California, they printed a story about the huge footprints here that were found by a worker. So this kind of got the whole town in an uproar here. Police investigated the footprints, they took pictures of it, all that. And then eventually the legend grew around the area, which is cool because it got people talking. The whole area was known for sightings of Bigfoot for quite some time after. Now, according to some of Wallace's family, Ray's brother, Wilbur Wallace, I'm Wilbur Wallace, and the nephew here, Mac McKinley, they used wooden feet to actually stamp footprints around here, so they used this as a prank. Now, Ray and a few other family members were kind of in on the prank over the years here. Ray Wallace had created hair and feces samples that the family left in the woods. Now, the Bigfoot researchers would find these, and then, they'd be like, holy shit, there's something here, right? Yeah, like, they all thought it was all fun and games, right? I mean, it's just a little prank. So that's what they did, right? Like, oh, the Bigfoot legend, we'll take this and we'll fucking run with it, right? So he created the hair samples here by like taking the hair from bisons that he owned on his farm here because he had this wild animal farm. Wallace then reported the sightings here, like he'd say he stumbled upon them or that his buddies had showed him the tracks and shit like that. And just to go an extra step further, what he would do is he would record Bigfoot sounds just to kind of keep the joke going. So if anybody was to look around, they would hear the recorded sounds and most likely get scared off or whatever, right? Because the scary sounds would add to the scary effect here and get the word going about Bigfoot. Now, Wallace ended up passing away from heart failure on November 22nd, 2002. So he was like 84 years old. So he passed away in a nursing home down in Centralia, Washington. After his death, his son Michael was like clearing out some of his stuff there. And his son Michael revealed that Wallace was in possession of large, poorly crafted, and fake wooden feet. So he found these with his father's belongings when he was packing it all up and stuff here. So this is what he used to make the Bigfoot fucking tracks here. He just stamped these fuckers in the mud, right? Wallace's version of Bigfoot kind of arose August 5th, 1958. He used a 16-inch model of a human foot carved from alder wood to leave the tracks around the logging area and everything here, like as a prank on his fellow loggers. Now, it was mentioned by his friends that he did make a lot of people laugh, and the family decided to come clean about Bigfoot here, and they talked to a reporter from the Seattle Times. So they were just kind of, curious about the rumors that he was making all this shit up. And in fact, he was just playing a prank the whole time, right? The family members, like, they knew the thing was harmless, right? But I mean, they decided the time was right to spill the beans here about it being a hoax and just his little bit of fun throughout the years. They said he was living proof that God has a sense of humor. And right there, a cryptid is born, my friends. Like, stories just keep gonna go on from there. And a lot of the lumberjacks back then, like, they thought the prints were from a large, like, Swedish lumberjack or whatever, because those guys always wore, like, really big boots. So, like, oh, it's just some Swedish lumberjack's fucking footprint, right? But there's also a few other footprints found around the world here. Like, there's one found at Maidencombe Coast Path. Now, this was found by a group of people with rock-solid coast-steering. So I guess they were on their little adventure or whatever here. Now, they said they went down the path. It was a little bit muddy. Then they found these large footprints. They kind of emerged from the nearby woods. So they followed the prints down the coast path for like 20 meters or so here before it kind of veered off back into the woodland. Now, the group who discovered the prints said they were all kind of weirded out by it because there was no, like, animal that they knew of that could make this fucking big of tracks. So they described an ape-like creature around 5 feet tall, brown hair covering its body, and it had like a greenish face. So this is the description that they gave. Now, they stated that the animal didn't have a tail or anything like that, and on 2 occasions, they found him like swinging from tree branches here with like tremendous agility. Besides that, like, nothing's been found in that area, though. I mean, police did search, and there were other officials that went around the area, like they found the prints and shit, but by that time, like, Bigfoot was firmly established in popular culture across the continent. Now, people always said that they seen him in, like, bushes, or, like, they heard the legend here, they would go check shit out for themselves, right? Like, oh, we gotta go see Bigfoot kind of thing, right? I mean, because the guy's presence goes way beyond recorded history, I'm sure. Like, there's tons of tales about this guy. Now, there's always some sort of, like, eyewitness report or sightings of, like, Bigfoot, right? Or of the beast. I mean, that's coming, right? Because there's just tons of cryptids about Bigfoot here. Like, the human brain's actually capable of making up explanations for events that, they can't immediately interpret or explain, right? Like, many people want to believe that these guys exist. There was a man named Rick Dyer. This guy here was like trying to get everybody to jump on the Bigfoot belief system here. So he brought Bigfoot out into the public eye here on a couple occasions. So this dickhead here was an American Bigfoot enthusiast known for portraying hoaxes surrounding the subject of Bigfoot. This dude here is actually like a used car salesman in real life, so I mean he's got some slipperiness to him, I guess. And now he's a full-time Bigfoot hunter. I guess that career path kind of paid him more money, obviously. Now, he made claims that he tracked and killed the mythical creature here, started charging like a small fee for anybody that wanted to see a glimpse of his body and shit, right? I mean, you gotta make a living somehow. And there are a few folks here that think this guy's just a straight up con artist here. I mean, there are also a few folk that are also into the folklore of Bigfoot that they kind of get drawn in with this guy, right? So they pay this guy whatever he asks kind of thing, right? Like, oh, cool. Like, they're that in awe of all the Bigfoot news and shit, right? Now, he did a nationwide tour with his catch. and he charged people like $10 to see the fake body here. He pulled in close to $60,000 doing some of this here. Dyer brought his Bigfoot in like a 20-foot trailer towed behind an RV. So he brought that to San Antonio one time here, and he charged like $10 to see the body. I think he charged $20 for an event with like a whole theater here that includes like a viewing, a question and answer session, and shows the film that they made here at Bigfoot and shit. Now the event sold out. He got a bunch of money. So he continued on doing this shit here. He went to other cities in the country here, Houston, other places up in Texas here. He charged people to see the creature. Now, this guy's a member of the Bigfoot hunting community up in San Antonio. This is actually a real fucking thing. So, back in the year 2008, he pulled this little scam here when he and two of his friends claimed that they shot a Bigfoot and they were keeping the body in a fridge. Now, there's a lot of questions I'd start asking him, like, how did he fit in the fridge? Like, the guy was like over 10 feet tall. What ammunition actually brought down that beast, right? Stuff like that. I mean, first of all, if it is true, why did they have to kill it, or why couldn't they capture it and let it live, those questions are coming. And on August 12th, 2008, Dyer and a dude named Matthew Whitten released a press release, and they went on a radio show called Squatch Detective. So they were going to announce that they had a dead Bigfoot body in their possession. So that's what the whole show was about there, back and forth of all that shit. Now, they had a bunch of grainy-ass, footage that they tried to show there. Wasn't the best. And, yeah, it showed Bigfoot encased in a block of ice. The two announced that they found the 7-foot, 7-inch, 500-pound creature while hiking up in North Georgia, up in June there. So, they rambled on that they had spotted, about 3 other similar creatures, just like him, along the way. Now, it took the men about a day and a half with 6 other men to carry out the Bigfoot creature from the woods. And then they were being followed by the other Bigfoot creatures, right? Because they wanted to see what was going on and everything else. So a couple other dudes here that kind of chimed in on the show there said, hey, did you measure its feet and all that? And, one guy's like, I touched it, I measured its feet, and I felt its intestines and shit. Just trying to go for, the extra push, right? But the thing is, the whole Bigfoot thing couldn't stay frozen forever. He eventually melted here, and this was revealed to be, one big fuck show of a hoax. It was just a pretty short-lived hoax. The whole thing lasted only, a few days or something like that. So upon being exposed, Dyer made claims that an unnamed government agency confiscated the real Bigfoot body, and then he was to be the one to produce this whole hoax thing. So they took the real thing, left him with nothing, told him to make this thing up. So then 4 years later, in 2012, Dyer claimed to have killed a Bigfoot creature here up in San Antonio, Texas in early September. So what he did here, he lured the Bigfoot out by using pork ribs from Walmart. He doused them in a special barbecue sauce. Then he kind of attached them to the trees. So we nailed him up all around the trees, he said there, and then that night we heard Bigfoot come back. I chased him down in the middle of the night. I shot him once. He ran. I shot him again, and he was toast. So this guy ended up at an unnamed university up in Washington State. So we had everything tested here, the creature's DNA and all that, and they told him that it was of an unknown species. So he made some more coin here, charging folk to see the body, which lay beneath a bunch of plexiglass and a wooden coffin here. So they charged $10 a gander, children were charged $5. And the whole tour sold out, and eventually it pulled in a bunch of money from the scheme. During the show, he told everybody that he had DNA sequencing done, a bunch of scans, an autopsy, everything else that you can imagine, right? Because he had to get the whole finest, genuine Bigfoot tests on the go, right? So he would prove to everybody that he wasn't a fucking scam artist. Critics panned this guy, saying he was pulling the same shit as he was back in 2008, so 4 years earlier. Now, Dyer actually slandered anybody who openly spoke up about him, right? Like, he'd lose his shit, right? Like, stop talking about me type deal, I'm not a fraud. And he got a professor by the name of Don Jeffrey Meldrum. So this dude was from the Department of the Anthropology at Idaho State University. He spoke with Dyer here, and he had his little suspicions of like authenticity and shit, because they wanted to work with him and all that stuff. So Dyer admitted to the scientists that the body or creature was constructed from a company up in Washington State, and then this was paid for by Rick. So the scientists that wanted to work with him kind of just abandoned all future events once he found out that he was kind of this fraudulent fuck. It was later announced on this dude's Facebook page here that he was made a twisted toy box by a man named Chris Russell. This is up in Washington. He admitted that he had manufactured at Dyer's request using like latex, foam, and camel hair. Now the Twisted Toy Box is like a tattoo parlor and oddity boutique. So they make a bunch of cool stuff here and collect and ship out shit along the way, right? Or you can go in and buy stuff, get a tattoo. Pretty badass place. But people felt ripped off by this guy here. Like, Russell started receiving fucking threatening phone calls and shit, emails and other contacts for, like, him making money off the prop and getting financial gain and shit, right? Because there's pretty much just a fake movie prop, man. Now, to this day, he actually maintains that he actually does have the body of a real Bigfoot that he shot and killed. But he can't produce it, so, there you go. Now, in 2013, Dyer was actually one of the 4 Bigfoot hunters who participated in a documentary called Shooting Bigfoot, America's Monster Hunters. So, check that out. I'm sure that's delightful. But even though this guy had already made, like, shady videos of the creature and shit, like, he wasn't the only one that did this. Like, the most famous Bigfoot video is actually a short film taken in 1967 by a man named Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin. Now, this is known as the Patterson-Gimlin film, or Patterson film. This is shot up in Bluff Creek. So the video shows what appears to be like a large and hairy bipedal ape. So the video's authenticity is still debated, but I mean, it's likely a hoax. I mean, the ape-like figure just could be a human wearing a fucking costume, right? Now, this is about a 36 to 40 second video. It was probably edited once or thrice over the years, too, right? You never know. It shows a video of a Bigfoot, like, casually strolling through, like, a clearing in the woods here. He strolls by, gives a quick glance into the camera there, and just turns his head, keeps on going. Now, the thing is about this video is that it's either genuine or it's fucking just a dude in a costume. Who knows? But, I mean, that video has been around for years, and still some folks say it's real, while others believe it's just pure bullshit. Yeah, it's nothing special. It's just like a little American short motion picture of an unidentified subject, and then the filmmakers have said it was Bigfoot. Now, the footage was filmed up alongside, I believe, Bluff Creek. We mentioned that. And filmmakers were one Roger Patterson. He was born 1933, and he passed 1972. And a Robert Bob Gimlin. He was born 1931. Roger Patterson died of cancer in 1972, and he maintained right to the end that the creature in the film was real. Patterson's friend Gimlin has always denied being involved in any part of a hoax with Patterson over the years on this. He explained this to like many of society, but didn't do a whole lot of interviews or anything like that over the years. I mean, you'd catch him around type thing, right? But Gimlin mostly avoided publicity, discussing the subject from at least the early 70s till about 2005. Then he kind of, talked a little bit more about it. So he began giving interviews and appearing at like Bigfoot conferences and other such things. Patterson said that he became interested in Bigfoot after reading an article about the creature This article was written by Ivan T. Sanderson in True magazine back in December of 1959. So, 1961, Sanderson published this encyclopedia, I believe it was called The Abominable Snowman, Legends Come to Life, something like that. So Patterson said he became interested in Bigfoot after reading an article about the creature by a man named Ivan T. Sanderson. So this is in True magazine back in December of 1959. So in 1961, Sanderson published another book. This was The Abominable Snowman Legend Come to Life. So worldwide survey of accounts here on like a bunch of Bigfoot type of stuff here, right, from all around the world. So he had different types, all the details with it, right? Then he published another book in 66, and then most people reviewed this as like just a bunch of newspaper clippings that were slapped into this book, and it was just sold off. A couple details and whatnot, but wasn't as good as the other two. So this is what had gotten Patterson like so intrigued and all like the Bigfoot frenzy and all that. So according to Patterson and Gimlin here, they were the only witnesses to their brief encounter with what they claimed was a Sasquatch or Bigfoot. So obviously after the video came out and everything, all their statements were questioned by a bunch of people, mostly due to inconsistencies and stuff like that. Because like Patterson had increased his estimates there, the creature's size, and like each retelling of the story. So after the recording and everything, Patterson and Gimlin met up with a man named Al Hodgson. So they went up to his variety store. This was up in Willow Creek. Patterson had intended to drive on to Eureka, and then he was going to ship his film and get it on the way. Now, he wanted some scientist type dudes to kind of back him up in the meantime, right? Now, the one he asked was Donald Abbott. Now, this guy was the only scientist of any stature to have demonstrated any serious interest in the Bigfoot subject. But Abbott had declined the invitation. So after they shipped the film, they headed back towards their camp, and this is where they left their horses. Now, on their way back, they stopped to Lower Trinity Ranger Station, and they arrived here about 9 p.m. Now, around this point, Patterson called the Daily Times Standard. This is a newspaper in Eureka. So, he relayed them his story, and they arrived back at the campsite here about midnight. So the next morning, it started to rain heavily. So Gimlin returned from the film site, from the camp, and he covered up the prints with like bark and other twigs and stuff to protect them from getting completely soaked. So the cardboard boxes that he had ended up getting left outside, so they were soggy, so he couldn't do anything with those, they were useless. So at first he thought like he brought in the proof of Bigfoot's existence. He really expected the scientists to accept his encounter, but only a few scientists were willing to even look at the film. 7 showings total occurred for that whole thing here. This was in Vancouver, Manhattan, the Bronx, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, then it went back to Washington again here. And that was all by the end of 1968. And then later on it went down to play in like Beaverton, Oregon and shit like that. So some people that watched it kind of saw it as like complete shit, and some were in awe. Like they mentioned like how intrigued they were by the short film, right? They thought there was like a little bit of scientific interest in that whole thing, right? So that's where Patterson was able to like capitalize on it. So he made a deal with BBC, allowing the use of his footage in like a docudrama. And then in return he got to tour along with the docudrama, so he got to fucking go where they went. In a way, he kind of melded this into like his own documentary, kind of like additional material was filmed for all this too. Now, this film was shown in a local theater around the Pacific Northwest and the Midwest, and it made about 75 grand from the fucking people after it was advertised and everything. So good for them. Now, his Bigfoot film generated like a fair amount of national publicity by now. Patterson ended up appearing on like a couple TV talk shows that promote the film here and his beliefs on Bigfoot. So he was on a couple shows like Johnny Carson, Merv Griffin, just to name a couple. And his stardom came from like this whole 16mm camera. Now he ended up passing away on January 15th, 1972 due to cancer. And he grew up in Wall, South Dakota, United States of America. Now, his wife, Patricia Patterson here, actually owns like the motion picture, the video, and CD-ROM rights for Patterson Gimlin film. Yeah, that's just another Bigfoot story for you guys here. I mean, but there's plenty more shit out there too. I mean, there's fucking tale about a Swedish guy here. He was named Albert Ostman. So he was a Canadian prospector who reported that he was abducted by a Sasquatch and held captive for 6 days, and this was back in 1924. So he was about 30 years old at this time. He ventured into the Toba Inlet. This is on the British Columbia coast opposite of Vancouver Island. It's just a little area that's actually was popular with gold prospectors and everything. So this is where he went. Now the Toba Inlet's like a deep fjord. This is on the western coast of British Columbia. So it extends like 20 miles into the coast mountains. Then it's only accessible by water or air. So go take a trip. Now this little inlet lies in the traditional lands of the Klahoose First Nation. So it's kind of like Indian burial sites and a band of native villages here and all that. So I mean, you could still see them up around this way. And the whole thing has like a max distance of like 35 kilometers. So I mean, that's the whole distance of the place. So the inlet curves its way many miles inland, cutting deep into the magnificent coast mountains. Now it's also surrounded by like majestic snow-capped mountain peaks, and it's actually fed by glacial waters. So it's pretty cool. Nice little bit of info, I guess. So originally, this whole place was called Canal de la Tabla. So I mean, the more you know, folks, right? And this was called that by like a captain of a Spanish vessel way back in the day, I think like 1750, something like that. But it was here that he had the old Indian dude with him as the guide. So like he kind of thought this whole area was special. So I mean, his guide along the way would start talking about like giant men and stuff, right? So he mentioned they had hair all over their bodies, but they weren't animals, like they're people, he said. Big people living in the mountains. Now, he said his uncle had saw tracks that were like 2 feet long, and another old Indian said that there was one he saw was over 8 feet tall here. So, I mean, pretty cool. They're seeing them around, they're telling people about it, the word's getting out about Bigfoot. Ostman had kind of brushed off the guide's story, like he didn't think anything of it, right? Didn't dwell on it, like, whatever. So, a while later, the guide actually got back onto the subject here, and he said, there may not be many, but they still exist. So, meaning like the Bigfoots are still around type thing. So they ventured deeper into the woods. He was kind of enjoying like this little bit of solitude on his camping trip. He stayed there about a couple of days. So he experienced like a couple fuck arounds on the first 3 mornings. So when he woke, he found the campsite had been disturbed. There was about 30 miles northeast of the inlet here, so that's where they stayed for a few days. Now, this mess wasn't anything major, just like some shit at a place, right? Some food over here, fucking couple cans that way. But he thought it could have been easily like some random animal looking for food or something like that, but there were no visible tracks. So he just waited around, figured he'd try to catch it eventually, right? So on the fourth night, he climbed into his sleeping bag, fully dressed, and he had his rifle on. I also stored a few like canned provisions and stuff in the sleeping bag, but he eventually fell asleep. So when he awoke, he was actually being carried away in his sleeping bag by some unknown creature. Ooh. So he tried to escape, but he couldn't. Then he was stuck being carried to like his new destination, and that was fuck pretty far away. He didn't know how far he was, right? So, what joys await this dude? As light was now breaking through the trees, he was placed on the ground after a 3-hour trek. Now he looked up, and there was a family of Sasquatches. There was an old man, an old lady, 2 kids, a boy and a girl. So they all had like flattish noses, large cheekbones, really big arms, and they were all covered with hair. except for like some bare patches around their eyes, soles of their feet, or palms of their hands. Their feet had palms on them, just like fucking dogs or whatever, right? Normal dog. And they had flat fingernails. The boy and the girl were actually nervous around this guy. The old lady didn't seem to be too impressed about what the old guy had brought back, right? He was just waving his arms around, trying to explain shit in their language. Now, they left him. They came back with like some grass, berries, twigs, nuts, stuff like that. And they just brought him food and they didn't try to harm him in any way. So how they communicated was like kind of through gesturing. So after 6 days with the Sasquatches, the older male had gotten into some shit. So I guess it was his buddy's food supplies and whatnot. So it not being like regular Bigfoot food, like fucking meat and stuff, it didn't agree with him. So it kind of upset his stomach. Then he became violently ill after he ingested the contents. This is where this guy would kind of get his break. So the old male dude was like dealing with his illness, right? Because he had the shits. Albert had fired an airborne rifle shot to frighten the older woman when she was going to chase after him when he started to run away. Now, he ended up getting away, and then he trekked on back to his original destination. Now, he got a ways out, so he slowed down a little bit here so he can kind of listen to a noise that he heard off into the distance. So someone was out using like logging machinery here, so he kind of knew he was headed back into civilization, so he was going the right way. Now, a few days later, he ended up taking the Union boat back to Vancouver, making that his like last prospecting trip. And that was like his only fucking experience with the Sasquatches too. So I mean he's gonna treasure that shit throughout his lifetime. So yeah, he ended up taking the boat back after he wandered and camped through the woods here and got back to the logging community. So yeah, no, he kept this whole encounter to himself until 1957. He never said anything. And then he kind of ended up talking to somebody here. So his story was first printed in a newspaper called the Agassiz Harrison Advance. So he was like kind of cross-examined by police, and he signed like a solemn declaration here. This actually affirmed the story was actually truth, under oath, and by virtue of the Canadian Evidence Act. So Ostman actually just repeated the story on multiple occasions to like Sasquatch researchers up until his death. That was up in 1975. So yeah, no, he tried to do some good out of this story, so good for him. And actually, his tale is actually considered to be like one of the most classic Sasquatch stories out there. But like I said, again, it's not the only one. Now there are a bunch of like Native American folklore and other tales too about Bigfoot. They have one they call the Hairy Man. Now, according to elders, the Hairy Man lives in like isolated places. He often hangs around the riverbed, feeding off mussels and crawfish and shit. So the hairy man often comes out at night here. So the hairy man will grab you if you're, not asleep or whatever. If you're out alone in the woods at night, he'll fucking grab you. So look out for him. But some people just say this is like an old wives' tale or whatever, right? The hairy man's just a fucking yarn that old folk tell if you've misbehaved or something like that. And even if you did, the hairy man would just hold you down by the head and, as long as he wanted. Couldn't go anywhere. These are the little stories that parents told their kids to behave with. And other legends go on too, like there's one here on a dark and stormy night. Imagine that. So this was sometime in the 1800s. A young boy became separated from his caravanning settlers. They were trying to escape the rising waters of a nearby creek. So the boy managed to survive on his own here, and he ended up becoming a hermit. He ended up getting separated and shit. So he grew up along like the banks of Brushy Creek. And then he came to view this area as his own. And yeah, he kind of grew up without civilization. So, I mean, not being civilized, he avoided contact with people, and he terrorized anybody who dared to enter his domain. So, frightening off like stagecoaches and other passerbyers and stuff like that. So, this guy's legend grew in the area until one day horses leading a speeding stagecoach trampled him to death. They didn't even slow down. He was trying to make his presence known, and the stagecoach just smoked him and killed him. So I guess after all that, he just ended up getting a fucking bumper sandwich. Well, hairy man's death, he'll live again. But others say like he accidentally like hung himself here while he was swinging on the vines. Some say he drowned in the creek and stuff, right, during a flood. And yeah, like each story actually has a different death outcome, but it has same details that get tossed around. That his body was never found, and the spirit had never left the road. So I guess if you get close enough to the area here, you can sometimes hear like howling, ranting, and screaming and stuff. So maybe if you're close, just take a fucking detour here, like take a left towards Albuquerque. Now this area is kind of known as Brushy Creek here, because the hairy man is said to haunt it, so that's what they named it. So that's just another thing while we're on the subject here. Now, Hairy Man was said to be like covered in hair from head to toe. The locals actually believed this was like an adaptation that became necessary as the child had outgrown his clothing after the flood, right? So you're growing up, these fucking clothes don't fit you. But he ended up making the leap from fucking clothes to having hair covering all over him, right? Because now the hermit was a Sasquatch creature, so good for him. Now, locals still claim like the ghost of the hairy man is still seen and heard from time and time again. I mean, there's lonesome stretches of roads that are adjacent to Bushy Creek, right? So, I mean, people travel all these ways, and some people see shit, some people don't. It all just depends on the night, I guess. So, next tale, I'll talk about the Tule River Indian tribe on the Tule River Reservation. So, according to members of the tribe, they've seen 1,000-year-old pictographs of pictures of Bigfoot, right? Stories tell why Hairy Man lives in the mountains. He steals food and some, and still he occupies parts of this reservation, right? So the Indians here kind of believe Hairy Man to be Bigfoot. Even in current times, we have stories too, like the Hairy Man was just a creature with like shaggy hair. He's a big animal and everything, right? But some people thought that because he ate animals and stuff, like he was gonna fucking harm people. So this is from the Yokuts tribe here. Parents warn their children not to venture out at nighttime or like go by the river or anything, right? Because they might encounter the creature. The Tule Reservation here was established back in 1873, and this was on a little of over 54,000 acres. Then it kind of got the population going after that. Now, Painted Rock there is just a rock shelter here. It's kind of like a sacred site to the Yokuts. Now, the site located immediately, like adjacent to Tule River, kind of has like bedrock mortars, pictographs, everything like that, pitted boulders. Now, the pictographs are actually located in the rock shelter. They're painted on the ceiling and walls on the shelter. So the pictographs include like paintings of like a male, female, and a child, and like kind of like a Bigfoot family or what have you. Now, there are some tribes out there that kind of believe that Bigfoot's like a messenger of like warning. So telling humans to change their ways or, they'll die. Others believe as seeing Bigfoot as a blessing and a sign of good luck. So there's always good, there's always bad, folks. I mean, it could just mean like you're in the right place in the right time shit too, right? And some see the creature as like a malevolent creature, right? Brings harm and stuff. Others think that it can paralyze you with a glance of its eyes. I mean, you stare in its eyes, you're paralyzed, you can't move. Now, the views of the Sasquatch among like the First Nations here, like all their sightings and stuff, like they see it as a protector of nature and the forests. And like there's tons of folklore on the Sasquatch anyway, right? Like it's just very heavily rooted in like indigenous culture. But I mean it was kind of transformed into modern day use, right? There was a couple people here. There was a dude named J.W. Burns. So he was like this Indian agent. So Indian agents were responsible for like implementing government policies on reserves, like enforcing and administering the provisions of the Indian Act, kind of managing like the day-to-day affairs of the First Nations people. Break it up that way, right? Now, The position of an Indian agent was established back in like the early 1870s here. Today, the position actually no longer exists because First Nations actually manage their own affairs through like modern band councils or self-government, all that. So this JW guy, he wrote a story called Introducing BC's Hairy Giants. This was April 1st, 1929, and this was in an edition of Maclean's. So they had an article on this shit. So the story became pretty popular. They talked about Sasquatch. He ended up making a bunch of masks and he toured the country and he made a profit at the expense of the folklore of the indigenous nations. So yeah, that's how people made some of their money and stuff, right? Good for them. The term Sasquatch was actually coined by a man named John Walter Burns. He was born in 1888 and he died in 1962. So yeah, he had this coined back in the 1920s. And even with the term Sasquatch being coined, I mean, there's tons of names for like Bigfoot, Yeti, Sasquatch, everything else like that. I mean, you can call it as many names as you want, but I mean, most of the tribe members, like especially those of the plateau tribes, a lot of those guys are up like the Warm Springs Reservation, kinda. So they identify Bigfoot as a stick Indian. So this is like a diverse category of beings who actually steal salmon and confuse people because they end up whistling and then it causes those people to become kind of lost and, disillusioned and shit. The next tribe is the Lummi people of the Pacific Northwest. So they call this guy Simikas. Now this is a race of nocturnal, hairy forest dwellers. They also whistle, kind of like a hypnotic tune or what have you, right? Kind of lures people off the path into the darkness. And yeah, the Suquamish tribe, they have stories of what they call wild men. These guys break into villages and they only steal the fish. But just because they do that, they later leave gifts of deer meat as a sign of a thank you or respect or what have you, right? So, fish for deer meat. There you go, boys. In the Algonquin tribes of the Northeast, they have legends here of what they call Witico or Wendigo. Um, this is kind of like a cannibalistic spirit here that possesses humans. The Yokut tribe here of California, they call them Mayak Datat. So this is like playing on like a pivotal role in like shaping the course of human history at some point. It'll come. There are also many worldviews here on Bigfoot. Some say that he has supernatural powers, like a really spiritual significance. Maybe he just goes a little bit beyond the physical realm type deal, right? So, like we already talked about ghosts and everything too, right? I mean, it's pretty crazy the tribes have mentioned like some shape-shifting abilities about Bigfoot, right? I mean, believing that he can transform into other animals or like even fucking other humans, I mean, that's pretty crazy. That's what they think, right? They think that he's like all powerful and everything. Even in Yokut legend, like Hairy Man was the first one fucking to walk the earth here. Like he was one of the first beings to do that. Along with like other powerful spirits here, like the eagle, and coyote, and the bears and stuff like that. There's also some of the Yokut tribe that also believe that seeing this creature is kind of like a powerful omen of death. So they have like special funeral rituals here and songs that invoke the hairy man to like go up to the afterlife. So like this will guide his soul to the afterlife for what they're doing. So that way his spirit doesn't become evil and terrorize them. In this way, like Bigfoot is not just like a character in a myth though. It's kind of like an active presence in the spiritual life and the cultural practices. Bigfoot is also said to converse with humans in their native languages too. Kind of suggests like a level of intelligence of like cultural sophistication and everything. Now the Lummi, they tell stories of them kind of appearing as like a deer or a bear. And they do this to trick hunters, and they only reveal their true form when they're shot with an arrow. So if they're shot with anything else, it won't show their true form. Now, the Nootka of Vancouver Island, they believe that the Sasquatch can turn invisible, or he can teleport from one place to another in just the blink of an eye. There's a few other tribes that actually see Bigfoot as like an interdimensional being, kind of capable of moving between the physical world and the spirit realm. Even the Lakota tribe, like these guys are the Great Plains area, they believe that Bigfoot is a manifestation of a powerful spirit that can actually bless or curse humans depending on their actions. So if they're good, they'll get something nice. If they're bad, they'll get in shit. Now, the Apache of the Southwest, they have stories of a monster, like a shape-shifting sorcerer. So he can control the weather and cause sickness and like those who offend it. Now, the Yurok of Northern California, like they believe that the Bigfoot is the guardian of the forest here, punishing those who take more than what they need from the forest or they fail to show proper respect for nature. So, like, you're going up, you're taking a couple apples or pears or whatever, and you're snapping all this shit, he's gonna get pissed. You don't need 5 pears. Who needs 5 pears? The Choctaw tribe actually have stories. They call this guy Champ. So this is a hairy giant that kidnaps children who, like, misbehave or if they're not home before like nightfall and shit, so if they wander too far from camp or wherever they are, he kind of just takes them. This would kind of like teach them patience and stability to listen to their elders. Some crazy ass stories too that I found that kind of describe Bigfoot like kind of interbreeding with humans. You never know. They have tales of Bigfoot actually abducting young women from their villages. Then he takes them as wives, and then he releases them years later, and then they have a half-human, half-Bigfoot fucking offspring. The Hoopa tribe, they tell like a similar story here of a woman who was kidnapped by Bigfoot, and then bore his child. So he grew up to be like this mighty warrior and leader of people and all that. So it's kind of cool finding all these stories here, like Bigfoot, right? Like human hybrids, everything, the realm of myth, legend, all that. And as we wind down here, folks, like all the tribal Bigfoot spiritual stuff's pretty cool. I do like that. And there's lots of just stories of him in the United States. There's some in Canada, the colder places, as he's also the Yeti and Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever you want to name him. There's always tales that are going to be around here, even besides the whole crazy Bigfoot human hybrids, right? I mean, you never know. These things could happen. Maybe the government's hiding something. But last one here. In the late 19th century, it was a Salish man named Jacko. So he was captured by like a group of railroad workers. Say that 10 times fast. This is up in BC. So he was described as like a half man, half beast character. He had hairy skin, ape-like features. So they took him, sent him off. The researchers got him here. So some of these guys like suggest that Jacko may have been the real life Bigfoot, you know? But the evidence and everything that they have is just too little to fucking claim anything that's controversial. Yeah, so that's just my little bit of info I had on Bigfoot here that I wanted to put together. And with this episode too, like I really enjoyed doing the whole Bigfoot fucking episode, to be honest with you. So thanks for letting me pop that off. I will have something else here in a bit. You can check out my show on Metal Cross Radio. You want any death metal bands, go check out Face the Wheel. Other than that, folks, I'll have some more Bigfoot stuff here down the line. This is just something I wanted to do to pass the time. And I have 2 other cases coming at you here in the next couple of days, so thank you very much for tuning in to Twisted Tales.
A community off northern Vancouver Island is at the center of an eerie mystery. People in Alert Bay say they've been hearing strange screams and howls from the forest at night. And the legend of the Sasquatch runs deep in their First Nations culture. Some are now wondering if those legends are real.
It's an eerie recording captured on a cell phone of something that's making strange howling noises heard throughout Alert Bay.
We heard it once, and I didn't get the recording. And then second time, I got the recording. And that's I was on the back porch. Very eerie.
The audio was recorded just recently on the backside of Cormorant Island. It's been heard by many all over the island.
This summer, I've heard it 3 times. I've heard it scream 3 times. But it's been coming here for years.
Whatever's been making the noise is heard primarily at night. Some say it's a dog, but others say that's impossible.
With that volume, absolutely nothing. No dog can make that kind of a noise with that volume.
Art Dick hears the vocalizations just outside of his home. He's convinced the calls are from a Sasquatch. He believes the creature is real because of several previous encounters, like several years ago on a remote island further south when a tree was thrown at himself and fellow clam diggers.
Pulled the tree right out of the ground. The branches were still on it. I don't know anything that can just literally pull a tree with roots and all. I mean, you know, you see that little alder growing out there. You try to go and pull it out, you're not going to be able to do it.
While the howls and screams that have been heard throughout Alert Bay could be dismissed as simply animal noises, you have to keep in mind that Cormorant Island is a location where there is no wildlife. There's no bears, no cougars, not even any deer. And while you could dismiss the noises, there have been plenty of sightings.
One person that's seen it, her father lives in Alert Bay, and she came up to visit her father. So she went up to the graveyard to pay respects to one of her family. And when she went up to the graveyard, she seen it standing there. She turned around and she got out of there right away. She didn't even go to the graveyard.
And a more recent sighting when a group of teens were playing soccer near the band's big house. A large upright creature moved quickly alongside the building in just a few strides.
Yeah, they took off right away. They don't even stay there anymore after the dark.
Twisted Tales.